Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 2023 annual membership meeting of Wisconsin Lakes. My name is Mike Engelson. I'm the executive director. Glad that all of you took some time out on this December evening to join us. We have a lot planned here, so we'll dive right in and get going. A lot to cover, but beforehand, just wanted to go over the meeting procedures. I'm sure if you've done Zoom webinars, you've seen all this kind of stuff. Session is being recorded, including the chat and the Q&A. So as I said before I started recording, just make sure that if you don't want what you are writing to be kept forever, then think about what it is that you're typing out. Mics will be muted throughout the session just because we have so much to cover. We're trying to keep it as tight as possible. So we'll take questions through the Q&A function. Probably available at the bottom of the screen, at least on most Zoom browsers. You just click Q&A and you can type in a question, and you may be able to upvote other questions if there's ones that are really interesting to you and you would like to have heard. And this session will be posted on our YouTube channel in a couple of weeks. There's some post-production stuff that has to be done, so that could slow things down for me getting it up there, but I will send out an email to everyone that's on the registration list for this session so that you know when it is up. And as I said, it's publicly available. Anybody would be able to watch it. So what we're going to do tonight, in a minute, will be called to order because it is technically an official meeting, though there's no actual decisions that are being made at this particular meeting. You'll get to meet our directors if you don't already know them, and we have some changes in officers to talk about and a new person to introduce. For those of you who are brand new to the organization, I'll talk a little bit about Wisconsin Lakes. You'll hear about our finances and our membership and what we've been doing this year. I'll give an update on lake policy. I'm guessing maybe 2 or 3 of you are here to hear about a particular issue. So I'll give you an update, up to the minute update on what I know about that. And then we'll talk about what we're doing in 2024 and beyond. So with that, I would like to first, before I introduce our new president-elect, Dan Butkus, who took over just earlier last month at our November board meeting, I'd like to thank our past president, Kathy Erickson, for the years of service that she put in that role. She was president during all of the COVID fun, which was, of course, for every organization challenging, to say the least. But it gave us this wonderful tool that allowed us to reach out to all of you every year and have this meeting online. But thank you to Kathy for everything that she has done, and I look forward to working with Dan Butkus, our new president, and a good friend. He's a lake leader, and I think you'll enjoy hearing from him. So Dan, go ahead, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd like to echo what Mike had mentioned about Kathy. Kudos to Kathy, and thank you for being our president these past several years. Excellent to have been a director on the board with you as president. And I'm honored to be elected president. This is what you get when you don't attend the meeting when they elect a president, is they make you president. But I'm joking, maybe. We all know that volunteer organizations are like that, but I really enjoyed the first month so far of being president, and I look forward to continuing. This is exciting. As Mike mentioned, Dan Butkus, I'm the president. I represent the South Central region. I used to represent the North Central region. I am a lake leader, crew 11. I own property along with my sister up on Squash Lake in southern Oneida County, and I'm the treasurer of our lake district there. So with that, I'm going to introduce our various directors that are with us tonight, starting off with Kathy, our past president. Kathy.
Thanks, Dan. I live on Stone Lake in northwest Wisconsin between Hayward and Spooner. When we moved there about 24 years ago, a neighbor quickly got both me and my husband involved with the Stone Lake shore owners. And then before I knew it, he also had me on the board of Washburn County Lakes and Rivers, which we call WCLARA. I soon learned that Wisconsin Lakes was WCLARA's connection to the goings-on in Madison and to the programs of the Wisconsin Lakes Partnership. WCLARA benefited greatly from its directors' participation in the annual State Lakes Convention and in Lake Leaders. I was on Crew 8 of Lake Leaders. The networking opportunities that Wisconsin Lakes provided were critical to our success. So, to make sure that WCLARA and other groups in northwestern Wisconsin continued to be represented, about 9 years ago, I joined the board of Wisconsin Lakes, and it's really been a treat to be able to contribute.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm going to introduce our two officers that are with us tonight. Our one officer, our Vice President, Derek Kavanaugh, is out traveling and is not able to attend tonight. But I'm going to start with David Zellinger. He's our treasurer and he represents the Northeast region.
Hello, everybody. As Dan said, I'm Dave Zellinger, treasurer of Wisconsin Lakes. I've been on the board for 3 years now. I live on Shawano Lake in Shawano County. I'm a board member of Shawano Area Waterways Management and also a board member of Waterways Association of Menominee and Shawano Counties. I was a member of Lake Leaders Crew 11, and I really enjoy my time serving on Wisconsin Lakes Board.
Thanks, Dave. Next up is Chris Sampson. He's our secretary. He replaces Kristen Charlton as secretary this year. So take it away, Chris.
Thank you, Dan. I'm a neighbor of Dave. I'm the past president of the Cloverleaf Lakes Association, which is about 10 miles south of Shawano on the Shawano-Waupaca border. And I too am a member of the multi-county WAMSCO waters of Menominee and Shawano County. And actually, although I'm hail from lived full-time in Green Bay and spend most of my time in the Northeast region. When I was young, my father had a syndicated fishing show on Green Bay TV. So I have fished about every lake in, from roughly Racine to Superior on that side of the line. I traveled with him when I was a kid and just developed a lifelong interest in waterways, fisheries, and the health of the environment. And I think I was Lake Crew 12, or maybe it was Lake Leaders 11, but I went through that program as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Before I move on to our other directors, we've already got a couple of questions, and this is regarding wake boats, which I'm not surprised. We will cover that a little bit later, and hopefully we'll answer those questions, but I do have them noted. And I'm going in no particular order other than how these people show up on my participants list. So next up is Bob Shell. He represents our North Central region.
Yeah, as Dan said, I'm Bob Shell. I'm a resident of St. Germain in Vilas County. I'm the chairman of the Found Lake Property Owners Association. I'm also a member of the St. Germain Town Lakes Committee. I've been on that for about 18 years. I'm a graduate of Lake Leaders Crew 13, and like Dan said, I'm in the North Central region for the Wisconsin Lakes Board.
Thanks, Bob. Next up on my list is Caroline Joyce. She is our director at large from the Southeast region.
Oh, hello there. I'm affiliated with Lake Country Clean Water. I'm a board member, and I was part of Crew 14, Lake Leaders, recent graduate, and I'm part of Wisconsin Lakes as also a board member. I live in Waukesha County, and it's also called Lake Country. I associate with all of the lakes that are surround me. And I do this because I actually like them all, and I look at them as islands with their own individual unique features, but also how these lakes are connected with one another based on groundwater, rivers, and streams. And so it's fascinating to me, and I love to help out wherever I can. So I'm glad that you're here this evening, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Caroline. I'm actually going to switch up. I'm going to move to Susan Trier. She is our board member at large in the South Central region.
Hi, I'm associated with Rock Lake. I'm part of their lake association, and it's with Lake Mills and Jefferson County. To give you an idea, we're about equidistance between Madison and Oconomowoc. And like Bob, I'm from Crew 13.
Thanks, Susan. Next, I'm going to move to John Richter. He's also from the North Central region.
Am I unmuted? There we go.
There we go.
Yes, I'm John Richter. I'm a resident of Sainer in Central Vilas County on Plum Lake. I'm chair of Plum Lake Association, and I'm on the board of Last Wilderness Alliance as well. I've lived in Sainer full-time since I retired in 2009. And I'm a member of our Town Lakes Committee that handles all of our large lake habitat projects and grant projects, as well as our lake management plans. And I'm part of the North Central region.
Thanks, John. And I think last up is Kristen Charlton.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks, John. My name is Kristen Charlton. I live on Lake Eau Claire, which is about a half an hour east of Eau Claire. I am a member of the Friends of Lake Eau Claire Association and the Lake District of Lake Eau Claire. I am a Milwaukee native, but moved here very pleasantly and live on the lake full time. I have been very active in lakeshore restoration, and I am a member of, oh gosh, this is going to make me feel old, Crew 6. So very happy to be here and happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. And last, we may have a latecomer arriving a little bit later in the program. Rick Moses, he's our director at large in the Northeast region. Rick Georgeson is not with us tonight. He is director at large for our West Central region. And Nick Homan is our director at large for the West Central region as well. I'm looking through the names to make sure I didn't miss anybody. No, I think that's all of the directors. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Mike.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks to all of you. You can get a little graphic view of where everybody is placed across the state, what it means when we talk about those regions. But really appreciate the work that all of the members of this board of directors does, and they do such a great job. We would not be who we are without them. So thanks to all of you. Some of you might be new to Wisconsin Lakes and be wondering what exactly we actually are. So I thought I would take a minute or two to talk a little bit about the organization. Wisconsin Lakes formed in 1992. We are the result of a merger between the Wisconsin Association of Lake Districts and the Wisconsin Federation of Lakes, which was the Association of Lake Associations. So the two lake organization groups came together, formed the Wisconsin Association of Lakes. We dropped the association name in 2009-ish, something like that, with the idea that we wanted to make sure that individuals felt welcome in our group as well, that it's not just an organization of organizations. We promote healthy lakes. We provide education and technical assistance to lake organizations. We advocate for sound science-based lake policy, and we work with our regional and statewide partners to promote and accomplish our mission. One of the big partnerships that we are part of is the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Partnership. This is really the group that puts on the Lakes and Rivers Convention in Stevens Point every year. Historically, the three main legs of the partnership stool are us representing all of you. You all are part of the partnership. both on your own and through representation by us. But we also work very closely with the Extension Lakes program at UW Stevens Point. So that's Eric Olson, Sarah Winju, and they do a lot of work that you're very familiar with in terms of administering the Lake Leaders program and doing much of the work for the convention as well. And then, of course, the Department of Natural Resources, the Lakes and Rivers section, we work very closely with them as well. Wisconsin Lakes used to be funded through beginning in, I think, in 1999 through a contract that was provided through the state budget through DNR to do this sort of work and help be part of the partnership. That contract was not renewed in the budget in 2015. But we have tried to keep up the kind of work that we have done and the kind of associations that we've had with all of these partners, because it's a really unique thing in the whole nation. There's not really another state that has anything quite like this, as far as I know. So we very much value the partnerships that we have. At this time, I'd like to welcome Bob Schell, one of our directors, to give a little longer thoughts about why he became a director and what Wisconsin Lakes really means to him. I think you're muted, Bob.
I just wanted to take a minute to go over a few things. I was in a position about 2.5 years ago. I've gone to the conventions for over 10 years in Stevens Point and Green Bay. And I often wondered, I thought Wisconsin Lakes was there. I see the triangle and all that stuff. But since joining the board over 2 years ago, I can't believe how much Wisconsin Lakes does, how hard they work, how the group works for the health of the lakes. Mike is constantly, keeping up with what's going on in Madison and coordinating things between Lakes Extension and Stevens Point and the DNR, and keeping us up to date and trying to come up with decisions. I think that, as you know, Mike does a lot of education. We get into AIS policies, we get into shoreland zoning. We do a whole bunch of things. And I just thought I'd say that because, I never gave it that thought. And when I joined the board, when I was elected on the board, I asked a lot of questions and I was very surprised. And I'm very proud to be on this board. So I just thought I'd give that pitch. And again, we're now only funded by memberships and donations. So we need help all the time. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. And speaking of funding and what our finances look like, I will ask now our treasurer, Dave Zellinger, to take the floor.
Okay, I'm going to give a very brief update of where we're at currently, through the third quarter this year. On the left, we have through the third quarter of 2023. The numbers on the right are for the full year of 2022. As you can see, we're quite a ways behind where we were last year for individual and organizations in terms of contributions. We're hoping for a very strong fourth quarter and a strong end of year campaign to try to close the gap. We had net revenue on the positive side last year. Right now, we're running at a fairly large deficit. Hopefully, we can make that up. We did get some grants from the DNR last year, totaling over $55,000. This year, that was only $3,000. So we need to make it up in contributions and, individual contributions and organizational contributions. But that's basically where we stand. Our total revenues of about $83,000 through September, and our total expenses were about $103,000. I can entertain any questions if anyone has any, but this is really where we stand right now.
I'll add that one of the quirky things about the way accounting bookkeeping rules work is that when you get grants, even if you anticipate that much of the grant is not going to be spent until the following year, if you get a grant in 2022, you record all the revenue in that year. And then sometimes if you don't have other grants that maybe you get in 2023 for 2024, you end up looking like you're running a deficit when really you're just spending down some of that grant revenue that was received in the previous year. Is the way I would describe it.
So Mike, this is Dan. I've got a question from Jerry Voigt. He wanted to know what our fiscal year is. And I can answer that. It's January 1 to December 31st.
All right. Moving on then. And if there are other questions, there'll be a moment to catch up with them as well. Just a real quick look at our membership. Right now we have 443 members. So to be a member of Wisconsin Lakes, anybody that donates at least $30 in a year becomes an individual member. The math is a little bit more complicated for lake organizations. So for every member that your lake organization have, it's $2.50 with a minimum of $100 a year and a maximum of $750. So if you have 100 members in your organization, it would cost you $250 to belong to Wisconsin Lakes, if I did that right. So we have 443 members right now in the individual category, and 237 in the organizations. That's pretty close to where we were last year. It's a little ahead on individuals and a little behind on organizations, but a lot of that is because of which you may then say, well, how does that reflect in the finances? Some of it is timing when mailings go out and when things come in. So there's always that can have an impact. We try to look at things at the end of the year is especially important. But whether it is an organization or you are an individual, contributions to us are obviously extremely important. You support our advocacy efforts, our communications and assistance, and all of our educational programming and event attendance, and all of those sorts of things. If you belong to a lake association who is an organizational member, you do have access to an umbrella directors and officers policy. The premium is from what I understand, competitive, though not necessarily at a particular discount from other policies of directors and officers insurance. The biggest advantage is that you don't have to go through any underwriting. If you are a member of ours in good standing, then you automatically qualify. And if you're interested in finding out more about that, shoot me an email and I can get back with you. All right, I think if there are any other questions, Dan, I can.
Yep, we've got some, and we've got a couple that came in from our finances after we gave that answer and moved on to membership. So Scott Otterson, sorry. Do we have any grants in the works now?
We don't have any, and we don't have any that are confirmed as coming. There are some things that we're looking at for next year, and we do have a development committee that is taking some time to build a development plan that will give us a more consistent, concrete plan for what it is that we're looking for moving forward.
Thanks. And I have anonymous attendee want to know if we're a 501c3 organization. Yes, we are. We're a nonprofit.
Correct.
This more probing question from Paul Armstrong. What is our balance in our checkbook? I presume you mean like right now.
I can give you that number through September. Through September, we had about $208,000 in the checking accounts, but some of those are restricted funds. So
yeah, so we do manage funds for the Red Cedar Watershed Conference and for the some funds that are generated through the Lakes and Rivers Convention that are held in a restricted fund for use by partnership activities.
And I have another question from Scott. And now Scott put another one up. Let's see if it's on financial or what first. Oh, Scott wants to know, is it worth getting CD rates?
It can be. Most of the and on some of those restricted funds, we've talked about that in terms of with the people, the other groups that we're managing that money for. With the problem with CDs is that you lock the money up for a particular period of time, and sometimes there's been concern on the part of the other groups that maybe we want to have that fungible, and that the extra interest that you get from a CD isn't necessarily gonna work out in balance. But yeah, it's definitely something that we have talked about.
And Scott's pointing out that current rate that he's aware of is 4.7. I'm sorting through these questions. Does the board treasurer feel the reserves we have are adequate to hold up to the fluctuations in revenue?
That's a tough question. We're working really hard to try to find adequate funding to, expand so that we have more of an outreach, and with more outreach, hopefully we can reach more people and, bring in more members, but it's kind of a vicious cycle. Without the DNR funding, yeah, it's been tough the last few years, but we've been managed to stay just about where we've been at the last 3 years. So I think we're fairly stable.
Thanks, Dave. I've got one question that doesn't really fit anywhere. The other two after that will be answered when we talk about policy and legislation. It has to do with wake boats. But Scott again asks, well, first off, he says, thank you for all your volunteering. It can be a sponge of a time, but truly appreciate it. Thank you for that, Scott. We do appreciate the recognition that this is volunteer work for the board. So thank you for that. He wants to know, can Chris lead an effort to get more fishery topics on the annual Lakes Convention that he's attended over the last 20 years, and that topic seems to be neglected? So duly noted. I don't know if we'll be able to get anything on this year. Certainly Chris is he's the ideal candidate, I think, given his background. Some of the stories he's told about his father going fishing with him. But thank you for the comment, and I think we should take that under consideration.
I am willing to pursue that, and will. Yes, it might be tough to get it into next year's convention, but I will pursue that.
Yeah, it's pretty much impossible this year. The schedule is pretty well fixed already.
I will say that every year the convention is planned not just by the folks from Extension Lakes and us. It's actually a pretty wide, broad, large committee. It has agency representatives on it. It also has some individual just citizens who are interested in doing the planning. So if you are interested in trying to influence what the convention looks like, it's a great way to get in the thick of it if you have the time. We meet about once a month starting in June, something like that. Sarah Winju does from Extension Lakes does a wonderful job of shepherding us through that process and keeping us on task. And the 2024 convention, we pretty much have everything set up as far as the programming for the most part. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But yeah, it's a great way to get involved and influence things if you have the time, is to join that committee. Shall we move on?
Yeah, well, let's see. I've got another question. Well, asking more conventions on Zoom would be good. I think having that as a combination has worked well. And another question from Kathleen Schroeder. At some point tonight, will we be talking about Lake Kit? Yes, we will.
Yes.
And its future. So, and I think that wraps up the questions for now.
Right.
When Mike will let you get on with 2023 accomplishments.
Yeah, and there will be another block where we'll be able
Yep.
to catch up with any others as well. So I did want to talk a little bit about what it was that we have done this year, so that you have an understanding of what the organization does altogether. So we do a lot of supportive member organizations through direct consultations, people calling, asking questions, sending emails. I do my best to get back to people as quickly as possible. There's a lot that goes on, so patience is very much appreciated. I do try to get back to people as quickly as possible, as I said. We also offer Lake Kit, which I'll talk about more again later. Lake Kit is a program that provides fairly low cost websites to lake organizations in the state. We participated in a number of events, the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Convention, of course, being one of the big ones. In 2023, the portions that I worked on mostly had a pretty major focus on the public trust doctrine. The theme, you can see there on the right, was called Building Trust Around Water Together. So we did a lot with the public trust doctrine and how recreational impacts are impacted by the public trust. So we talked about everything from lake capacity issues to specifically about impacts from wake sports and enhanced wake kind of activities. We'll get more into the policy side of that in just a little bit. There were a number of regional and local lake events. The Red Cedar Watershed Conference went off for the first time since the pandemic. So that was a lot of fun. That's held every year in UW Stout. I'll talk more about the 2024 event coming up, as well as the Northwest Wisconsin Lakes Conference, which is in Spooner, was in Spooner last year and will be in Spooner again this year. We also organized our own Southeast Wisconsin Lakes meetup. Representatives from a number of different lakes in Southeast Wisconsin met at UW Milwaukee's lakefront facility and had a discussion about a number of events, especially around recreational impacts. And of course, we participate with the Wisconsin Lake Leaders Institute. We had an advanced lake leaders session up north this year. Had a lot of fun with that. And I know many of you were able to attend that as well. If you're not familiar with lake leaders, I'll get into that in just a little bit as well. I also feel like we had an impact. We've talked over the last several years about the idea of managing recreational impacts. And earlier in the year, we, as I said, with convention and at some other regional events, did some workshops and trainings on how to think about lake capacity, about wakeboat studies that are out there, the science and all of that kind of stuff. Worked on those sorts of issues, both with Wisconsin groups, especially lately. John Richter referred to Last Wilderness Alliance. We also have worked with a relatively new group called Lakes at Stake Wisconsin. Wisconsin's Green Fire is another statewide nonprofit that has had some interest and is continuing to work with us on the wake issue, and a number of other statewide and regional groups as well. We work with local and county governments. We have Derek Kavanaugh, who is a county conservationist on our board, and have work in a number of different roles with them. We also, a couple of years ago, we did a study on boater attitudes towards boat decontamination programs. So we know what decontamination programs work and how they work, but they will only work if people are willing to use them. So we tried to do a study of to see exactly how they would react to that. We have an article that we're hoping to get published in a scientific journal here coming up sometime in 2024.
Mike, this is Dan. I'm going to ask the other board of directors to turn off their video. Your sound is cutting out a little bit. So if we don't chew up as much bandwidth, that might help.
This time of day, I tend to seem to get a blip, so it usually passes in a couple of minutes. So, we also have been working on a revision package for Chapter 33. I'll talk about that. Actually, I think, Dan, if it's all right, I'm just going to skip over this question block and we can catch up with everything, go right into the policy discussion, if that's all right.
Mike, I'm just going to read you the two questions. Oh, okay, now we have some more. Several things. First off, one of our board of directors, Rick Georgeson, joined us, and if at this time I'd like Rick to just briefly introduce himself to the group. It may be that Rick is having some difficulty with his audio.
Dan, up, but I think I heard you asked me to introduce myself.
There you are. You're a little choppy, but go right ahead.
Georgeson, I live on Lake Petenwall, and I'm representing and Castle Rock, a citizen group to improve the water quality of just south of Nakusa, and I've been on the a little over a year, and I'm really here tonight.
Thanks, Rick. Sorry, your audio is a little choppy, but hopefully everybody caught most of that. Before you move into policy, I'm going to read you the policy questions that came up early, Mike, and that way there you can incorporate that into your discussion. Scott Otterson said, onions and apples between Felskowski and Andre Jacques Bill. It's important that Lake's position clearly support the Jacques Bill on this important Lakes issue. Craig Butler is, what is our opinion of LRB 5069/1? And for those who don't know, that is Andre Jacques' bill. It is a Legislative Reference Bureau draft at the moment. It has not been assigned to the Assembly and Senate bill numbering system yet. Linda Zillmer is asking, have we reached out to Glyphwick? And again, Scott, a Zoom on the wave restrictions, key speakers, topics would be suggested. How many attendees Zoomed during the last conference? And that's specifically to your earlier comments, Mike. Mike, you're muted.
That's what happens when I told myself don't mute myself at all, because then I won't have that happen. What I was trying to say was I'll quick comment on the virtual piece of the Lakes Convention. There will be virtual presentations again this year. We'll have slightly more, I believe, than we did the last year. I see Sarah mentioned that we'll have 60-ish. I think that means 60-ish people in 2023. It has been, moderately attended. It's fairly time intensive and can be technically complicated. We have some limitations in the facility with what we're able to do. So there are some issues along that line. But we're aware that it is something that people are interested in, and are continue to try to investigate how to make that happen more, while balancing, making sure that the in-person convention is also beneficial. There's also the possibility we're trying to do more sorts of webinars outside of convention too, things like this that will be on specific topics. So I think you'll probably see more of that in 2024 as well. So that we don't run out of time, I want to make sure that we get through the policy stuff, because I know that's what a lot of people are interested in. Don't worry, the wake boat stuff is coming. But first off, some of the stuff on Lake District law. And there's the only real piece of legislation going on right now that I wanted to make sure that we mentioned was AB 97. So Assembly Bill 97, Senate Bill 85. That bill has been passed by the legislature and is scheduled to be signed into law by Governor Evers tomorrow. It allows lake districts to use email as the method of notification for things that they have to provide property owners and residents official notifications of. So things like meeting notices and the assessment information when that comes out in the fall. All of that kind of stuff can now be done by email. I know from having had conversations with some representatives of districts, I think it's probably already been people have been using email as a notification process, but technically it was not, that was not allowed under Chapter 33 until now. The one caveat is that for people to get stuff by email, the property owner or resident will have to opt in to that option. And if you'll, we'll just hold questions, I think, until I get through all of the policy. There's not too much more here, but I did want to talk about the proposed revisions that Wisconsin Lakes is working on. This is something that we've been working on for a number of years, and I know people are hoping to get something done, and I assure you we are moving with as much speed as we are able to do. So we have been working on this with, I've been working on this with Dan Butkus and Eric Olson from Extension Lakes. This is a more comprehensive revision to Lake District law in the state that has been done in at least a couple of decades. We're still hoping that we can get it passed in 2024. Looking at the lay of and we are working with a legislator on a bill, looking at the way the legislature seems to be working this year as we are heading into 2024. It sounds like they may be finishing up even earlier than normal. The Assembly has talked about trying to be done sometime in February. So there is some concern that we may not be able to get it passed in 2024, but we should have a bill at least that will be able to get reintroduced and hopefully taken care of in 2025 if we can't get this passed this session. So the legislative session ends effectively whenever the legislature is done in early 2024. It's an election year, so everyone will be going out and campaigning, and they pretty much close up for shop. If you have questions about that process, ask in the Q&A. I can explain later. What we're actually proposing in this package largely is we're trying to make the whole chapter a little bit easier to understand, to clarify some definitions, make sure that terms are used consistently throughout. So if you're someone from a lake district that's not used to reading a statute, you can come to it and you can get some sort of understanding. The things that we actually did, specific items that we've actually asked for, have included things like an increase in the bid limit to $10,000 from $2,500, the ability for commissioners to be paid for work for the district if that work is outside of the duties of commissioner. So for instance, if they're to get paid to repair a weed harvester or something like that, along the lines of a town board member being able to do work for the town. There's a similar statute that we essentially co-opted and are asking to be put into Chapter 33. One of the problems that people had doing annual meetings during the pandemic shutdown, when they were not able to meet, there were a number of questions that came up. There were things that appeared to have a hard time deadline that had to happen. There were questions of whether commissioner terms would end before an annual meeting could actually be held. So though we cannot get around the fact that annual meetings do have to be held in person because of the rules around electing commissioners, there are some provisions that we're asking for that will help extending the time or postponing that time to work a little bit more seamlessly than they might be right now. We are asking for the allowance for districts to create a contingency or kind of a rainy day fund. So rather than have to spend all of the money that is raised in a particular year in that year, right now there's been some ambiguity as to whether or not a district could hold over money, or if there's money for a program that they just end up not having to spend, what to do with it. This will explicitly allow the creation of some sort of contingency fund. And offering a not necessarily a different process, but in the statutes, the process will be described more clearly for formation of a district, for the different steps that need to be gone through to do that. So we hope to get this passed in 2024, but it's getting close to the finish line. Unfortunately, if it misses the early 2024 deadline, it may get pushed to 2025. All right, now for the cause celeb, right? Wake sports and enhanced wakes. For if there's anyone on this call that doesn't know what I'm talking about, I'd be a little bit surprised, but I'll give you the quick bit of background. What we're talking about here are wake surfing, wakeboarding. These are sports that predominantly use a wake boat in order to create the excessively or enhanced wakes. An enhanced wake is basically one that is intentionally amplified in order to allow someone to surf behind the boat, essentially. It's not only done by wake boats, though. You can actually have some third-party add-ons to existing powered watercraft that can create these wakes, at least to some extent. And so we try not to talk about the boats as much as the enhanced wake or the sport. So there are two bills here that I want to talk about, and they both sort of encapsulate each end of the spectrum. There is one that has been introduced by Senator Mary Felskowski and Representative Rob Swearingen from Oneida, Vilas County area, that has been introduced into the legislature as Assembly Bill 656 and Senate Bill 680. What it would do would prohibit wake sports from being conducted within 200 feet of the shore and not on lakes 50 acres or smaller. This is very similar to legislation that was introduced by the boating industry in several southern states. We are opposed to that bill because of those standards. They don't meet what current science says is necessary to prevent impacts, or at least keep the impacts of those wakes the same as the wakes that are typically generated by other motorboats. But in addition to having standards that we don't really believe would do anything, the bill also would put a cap on regulation at that 200 foot from shore mark. So it actually prevents local governments from passing ordinances that would be stricter. It does, however, allow local governments to pass ordinances that would be less strict. So it's really a cap on regulation and not a regulatory framework for the boats. That bill is in committee, so it's in both an Assembly and a Senate committee is the way it works. And we are waiting to hear about public hearings. The authors have expressed that they are willing to talk about changing what's in the bill, but have not come up with any other kind of proposal as far as I know. The public hearings, we've heard rumors that they may come in the next couple of weeks. I checked right before we went online, and there had not been anything scheduled for next week yet. But for all I know, that could have happened in the last half hour or so. That bill is the opposite of that bill, I guess, would be an a proposal by Senator Andre Jacques. I think the question was asked whether or not we support this bill. We do absolutely in principle. The way it's drafted right now, it would actually take away a cause of action for someone that was injured by just someone negligently operating a powerboat. I've had conversations with him that it does sound like he understands it's an unintended consequence of that bill, and I'm pretty confident that that will end up being changed, and that's really the only thing that would keep us from supporting that bill, because we don't want to lose that cause of action for everybody. But what Senator Jacques' bill would do, it would prohibit any kind of enhanced wake on a lake smaller than 1,500 acres, and on the remaining 77 or so lakes, there would be no enhanced wakes within 700 feet of the shore or of other lake users. We asked the question, and I know others have as well, as to why there's no depth restriction, because these boats not only cause waves that travel across the water and impact shorelines and other water users on the surface, but in order to create the wave height, they drive a stream of water down into the lake, which can stir up the lake bottom, release pollutants that are held in the silt at the bottom, and cause habitat destruction. I think the reason probably why there's nothing in this bill related to depth is because the 1,500 acre standard removes the activity from so many lakes. Just from a political expediency standpoint, I think he probably felt that adding a depth on top of the distance marker just was probably not politically practical. And the 1,500 acre proposal and 700 feet from shore mirrors what was suggested in a Wisconsin Conservation Congress motion from a couple of years ago that was overwhelmingly supported. So this bill largely mirrors that effort. So far, it's still out for co-sponsorship, so it's still he's still seeking other legislators to support it with him. So I assume that at some point he will be introducing it into the legislature, but it could be a couple of weeks, something like that. As I said before, the legislature is probably going to be done by the end of February. So this is all moving very, very quickly. And whether anything actually happens or not with these bills, that's a big question. So I believe that's all I had to say on those, and am now ready to take whatever questions in these wavy waters that you would like to throw at me. I'll do my best.
I'll go ahead and put my video on. Scott, again, he asked, is the email issue regarding lake districts okay for sanitary districts also? And the answer to that, Mike, and you're going to correct me if I'm wrong, the answer is no. It does not apply, because sanitary districts are covered under Chapter 60 and lake districts are covered under Chapter 33. Unfortunately, they are similar. They were written, the statutes were written similarly, but over time they have diverged. I don't know what would be involved in trying to bring sanitary districts up to even the current speed of Chapter 33 statutes, because there are more statutes now in 33 for lake districts than there are now for sanitary districts. And companion to that, Scott is asking, can these be included for a sanitary district bill? It would be good for these to be consistent. And I agree with you, Scott, I do.
The legislators that introduced that bill were Senator Teston and Representative Krug from the Stevens Point area. I would guess we're probably going to see many more institutions of government moving this way, would be my guess. It only makes sense that email would be used more frequently. We had some questions as an organization that we kind of worked through as to whether or not, because of the sometimes vagaries of being able to get email to the people that are that the notification is intended to go to, whether or not that was sufficient, whether or not we had sufficient email systems in existence in order to be able to do those sorts of official notices. We were fairly comfortable with it by the end of discussions and supported the bill. But I think that's something that, as you know, we move up through sanitary districts and school districts and town boards and all of the other types of notifications, governmental bodies that do notifications will see that question come up. I think it's a logical follow-up bill, though.
I'm going to switch back to enhanced wakes. This is from Jim Bakken. Has the Wisconsin Towns Association weighed in on the two bills, since these would restrict their ability to regulate local boating? I was just trying to pull it up on my other computer to see who's registered in favor or opposed to these bills. Unfortunately, the Ethics Commission website is down and I can't find it, but the last I looked, which was earlier today, Wisconsin Towns Association has not weighed in on this.
Yeah, I have not heard anything from them on it, and have not had a chance to contact them. I do know that the Wisconsin Realtors Association had registered neutral on the bill, and I plan on talking to them to find out where they're exactly sitting. We also don't know how any of these groups are feeling about the shock bill, because that has not been officially introduced. So there's no way to file any unless you put out a press release or put it on your website. There's through the ethics board. There's no way to indicate feelings on a potential.
Yep. I'm going to skip to Jerry Voigt because it's related. He says that our call to action regarding Assembly Bill 656 to contact our reps was very helpful. Do we have a similar call to action to support the Jacques bill coming out? And again, Mike, you can correct me, but the answer is we're not going to take a position on the bill till it actually receives an Assembly bill number and a Senate bill number, and it hits the floor. As a legislative reference bureau draft, it's a draft.
It has to be a little bit of a nuanced message. So you're not incorrect about that, Dan. I do have plans to put something out talking about that the bill exists at least. I think if I would not want people to not be talking to their representatives about it, because I do think that whatever problems there are can be taken care of. To be completely frank, one of the reasons that there hasn't, well, I guess there are two reasons why I haven't put out another action alert on everything. I tend to not want to overwhelm inboxes, and not knowing whether or not there was going to be a hearing on the Feltzkowski Swearingen bill. I was kind of holding off until I had a little better idea of whether or not something was going to happen. And then I've been tied up preparing for this meeting as well. So tomorrow, you can hopefully look for something by the end of the week.
I don't mean to be stealing all your answers, but some of these, even I can answer these, having hung around you enough, Mike. John Schott asks, how far in advance do hearings need to be scheduled or announced? And that's typically as little as 24 hours.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one. So generally, it has seemed like most hearings for the following week get noticed probably Wednesday or Thursday of the week before. So I noticed there had been no hearing scheduled for next week. There's one that has been scheduled now, at least was before before I got online here. We're pretty sure that there is a hearing of the committee that is hearing this bill that's going to be scheduled for the 19th. Whether this bill will be on it or not, we don't know, but that hearing hasn't been scheduled. So the typical practice right now has been, middle of the week before the hearing would actually occur. The reason they do that is because they don't want to do it too early, because they may not know if a particular bill is going to end up wanting to be heard on that hearing or not. So there's negotiations going on between the committee chair and the authors of the bill as to whether or not to put that on that hearing. So they kind of try to wait till the last minute. Now, occasionally there will be a bill. I have seen situations where things get noticed. There have been bills earlier this session, actually, that the bill was introduced on a Tuesday. It was put into committee on Wednesday. There was a call for a hearing on Thursday. I kind of don't think that will happen with this bill, but I've been wrong before, so I don't like to make predictions. So keep watching your email, I guess, to as soon as we find out when there is a hearing, we will let everyone know.
In a related question, Scott is asking, will the hearings be Zoomed? They are usually broadcast on, was it Wisconsin Eye?
Yeah, they're broadcast. Some are broadcast on Wisconsin Eye. Somewhat depends on what other hearings are going on. The network only has so many cameras, so they will. For those of you who don't know, Wisconsin Eye is a nonprofit organization that exists solely to broadcast Wisconsin state government. It's kind of like the C-SPAN. I think it's available on Spectrum cable, but maybe not others. I know I have YouTube TV and it's not available there, but you can watch online. So they do record and archive all of the stuff that they present. So you can go back and watch past hearings of committees if you can't be there. That can also sometimes be nice, because if it's a long one, then you can skip over the parts that you don't want to have to watch. You don't care about the first 5 bills. So,
Mike, can you put the Wisconsin Eye link on the chat?
Yeah, it's just wisconsineye.org, but I can try to talk and type at the same time.
Well, that's okay. Well, there's another question. This is from Jerry, and I'm sorry, I'm getting to these in related topics, not in order in which they'd appeared. So if I haven't gotten to your question yet, hold on. Are we working behind the scenes to see if to see about getting other sponsors? I assume for the Jacques bill. I'm just going to be coy and say that would be like kissing and telling. Yes, we work behind the scenes. Yes, we are able to lobby. Sometimes you don't talk about that when it's a highly sensitive issue and you're trying to finesse things. And if I got that wrong, Mike, I'm sorry, but that's I don't think we can really divulge what we've done and with which representatives. It's at this
Well
moment,
said.
at this
well said. And we'll also say that your local representative hearing from constituents is just as, if perhaps even more influential sometimes than hearing from statewide lobbying organizations. But we are definitely talking about how can we help manage this bill along between us and other partner organizations and all of that.
Okay, now Scott is just making jokes, so I'm just going to leave that one alone. Thank you, Linda. Linda put wisi.org on the Q&A. Paul Armstrong, there is some sort of public comment on vehicle and boat use to the DNR that's due by 12/10. Whatever this is, does it have a wakeboard impact? I'm not aware of this. Are you, Mike?
I'm not sure exactly what it is that you're talking about, which leads me to think that I'm almost positive that it doesn't. To be honest, the Department of Natural Resources does not have a lot of authority in this realm, other than in the enforcement realm. I'm trying to, as I'm talking, I'm trying to think of what it might be that you're talking about. And if you have, can find a find out exactly what it is, I'd be interested in you want to put that in the Q&A or even email it to me later if you find out what you're talking about, because I would be interested in taking a look at that. Wisconsin's DNR is able to do things at the luxury of the legislature often, much more than has been in the past. There's a lot more legislative oversight. So a lot of what's going on is going to have to go through the legislature just naturally. That's not necessarily in reference to what you're talking about here, but I know people have talked about the Vermont situation where Vermont's DNR has a huge grant of authority where they can take a permit request, a petition from citizens and create a rule out of that petition. And that's what's going on in that state. We do not have that power as citizens in Wisconsin, and the administrative rulemaking procedure is restrictive and takes a really long time for DNR to do a whole lot. So as far as agency versus legislature, in terms of time, legislature is definitely the best bet, and we'll end up having a say regardless.
Hey, Mike, Jerry elaborated. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources will hold a public hearing on proposed permanent rules to revise chapters NR 1, 11, 45, 51, 115, and 116 of the Wisconsin Administrative Code relating to a variety of DNR property management regulations. The public may submit comments on the proposed revisions through December 10th. So if it's going to be about wakeboating, it would appear under Chapter 30. I'm not really sure it would appear in any of the NR administrative codes.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything in any of those that would be applicable. But I will take a quick look and check into that. Thanks for bringing it up.
Okay. Scott, again, great work on the wake topic and keeping them updated. I think the support has to be in by December 14th and go from there. And just as a quick note to everybody, there is a Forestry, Parks, and Outdoor Recreation Assembly Committee meeting on the 12th of December, but there is no agenda. And the Financial Institutions and Sporting Heritage Committee for the Senate, which has SB 680, they are planning a meeting on the 19th of December, but there is no agenda. So, if they're going to have these public hearings in December, those would likely be the dates, but without an agenda, it would be too early to say anything. I'm just going to keep going through these because I want to try to make up some time, Mike. Jim Bakken, I understand the St. Anthony Falls study will be studying the impact of prop wash. What is their schedule for this study? They've pushed that out until spring, I believe. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, that's my understanding. And John Richter, you might have some more information on that as well. So they did a phase 1 study that talked about distance that the waves travel and the distance from shore that would be necessary. The phase 2 study is about prop wash depth, and they were thinking that they were going to have something to be introduced, to be released this fall or early winter, but they had to go back and redo some calculations because from what I understand, they discovered some things that they didn't expect to find that made it even more intriguing. So they went back and did more calculations that had, I am not a wave scientist by any stretch of the imagination, but it had something to do with transverse waves coming out of the back of the boat that was also even an accelerant to what was happening, the push down into the water column. So to get really good numbers, they went back and did some more research this past summer. Is that what you understand, John?
That's all that I know too. Jeff Meisman had a conversation with Jeff Marr from St. Anthony Falls earlier this week, and they're not really giving anything up at this point. They're still working on their data. I've seen I've seen a video of the wave dynamic on the transverse side of the wake, and it has some interesting characteristics, and I think that's what they're talking about. It's going to be fascinating to see what they've got. But Jeff said that they're probably not going to have anything until late spring. That's the best I know.
Okay, I'm going to try to speed things up, and for the sake of time, because we're 15 minutes away from the supposed end. We're running a little bit long. I'm just going to ask that if we haven't answered your question in these next 7 that are listed on my screen here, you can always, email them to Mike or one of the board of directors, and we'll get an answer for you. Linda Zilmer is asking, are we reaching out to Glyphwick? And I presume this is in regards to what they believe, what the legislation regarding wake boats.
Yeah, that's actually that's a great question. Again, partially because of making sure that you all are aware of what's going on and limitations on time. I haven't quite yet, but I do intend to reach out to them, especially in relation to the. I'm especially interested in if they have a position or seeing problems with wild rice because of the boats. I'm guessing probably that that the waves are coming not only in greater height and power, but also from different directions than waves would normally come from. So a protected area, either a wild rice bed or sometimes a loon nest or something like that, they end up being in places that normally are protected from the prevailing winds, and these things are obviously coming in different directions. So I would expect that there would be some issues with that. I haven't seen anything from them indicating any kind of position, but it is something that I plan on pursuing.
Okay. Again, Linda, I'm hearing many complaints across the Northwest about regular boating activity not following existing rules and lack of enforcement. Linda, you're not the only one, and that's a perennial problem even before wake boats. Having property on a lake in northern Wisconsin, having lived up there when I was growing up, you always get people, and it ebbs and flows. To me, it always seems to ebb and flow. You get a lot of violators, and things taper off. People start following the rules, and then it resurges again. Dan and Fawn Johnson, Lakes at Stake, has made a clear statement on what they view the regulation for the enhanced wakes. What is Wisconsin Lake's approach?
We did release a statement early on, saying, kind of expressing what sort of our minimum values would be. I think in the statement we said 500 feet from shore. We certainly would prefer 700 feet from shore. I think that's probably closer to what the science is actually saying. There has to be some level of depth. We are perfectly fine, though, with some sort of acreage ban. And because the 1,500 acres was what has been vetted, not that it was a public survey, but it was certainly a survey of people interested in outdoor recreation kinds of things through the Wisconsin Conservation Congress. We're perfectly fine supporting a 1,500 acre ban.
Dick Lamers, regarding the proposals for wake boating, will anyone be speaking at the hearings on the impact of shoreline erosion due to wave action? And I believe the answer is going to be yes, because if I show up, I'll be talking to that. I know a number of people who will be talking to that if they show up. It's not just stirring up the bottom impact on aquatic vegetation, but shoreline erosion is certainly a part of that as well.
Correct.
Anonymous attendee, DNR is not having any problem. This is a comment. I don't think it's really a question. Did not have a problem imposing the stupid dredging changes when the legislature couldn't get it passed. I'm going to leave that comment. I'm not going to go any further on that one.
And Dan, I know there are probably some other questions out there, but in interest of time, I think we do need to move on because I don't want to miss out on talking about Lake Kit. And
Yep. There is one other that I do want to get out there, and it's from Joe Pizik. Are there any states passing restrictions on wake boats? Minnesota comes to mind first. And if you could quickly answer that, Mike.
Yeah, so there have been a number of legislative attempts at similar bills with a 200-foot, I think 250-foot distance in Minnesota that did not pass. A small section of the Willamette River in Oregon near Portland has some restrictions on it. That passed. There's the Vermont Department of Natural Resources, we expect will be releasing a rule relatively soon. Most of the rest of the things that the legislation that has passed has been in southern states, and it has been, in the 200-foot, no wake surfing on 50 acres along the lines of the current bill that's out there. So I would say that, to my knowledge, there is no other than the one body of water in Oregon, no meaningful state legislature, state government passed legislation. All right.
I'm gonna let you go. I can answer the rest of these. I think I'll type in an answer.
And I'll go through some of this relatively quickly, and hopefully we'll have a little more time left at the end, but talking on that screen so long that everything went to sleep. Wanted to talk a little bit about what's coming up in 2024. So just some events to take note of if you are either in that part of the state or want to travel. These are all some really great lake-related, water-related events around the state. The Red Cedar Watershed Conference is in UW Stout on March 14th. That subject for this year is the theme is related around groundwater. The Red Cedar Conference is a great event that really works towards the health of the whole Red Cedar River watershed, which has been beset by a lot of problems with polluted runoff that has caused very bad algae blooms in lakes, especially in Lakes Tanner and Mahnomen, but all up and down the watershed. And so this is the 11th or 12th year. Dick Lamers is going to get mad at me for not remembering exactly where we are, but it's been a while. We've had a number of these, and that's a great event. That's at UW Stout on March 14th. As I've mentioned before, the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Convention is April 10th to the 12th. That you can get information about it on wisconsinwaterweek.org. The registrations for that will open sometime in January. There is a hotel block, and lodging does tend to fill up. So if you're planning on going, you might want to book your room before you even book your time at the convention. But that should be another great Lakes and Rivers convention. The Northwest Wisconsin Lakes Conference is in Spooner in June. That's another one that Wisconsin Lakes is part of the planning for. These last two were not necessarily part of the planning for, but we often will. I've presented at these. Other people from the organization have presented at these. So the 6 County Lakes Workshop that Oneida and Vilas County Lakes and Rivers Associations put on in Rhinelander, and the Healthy Lakes Conference that Lake Country Clean Waters puts on in Southeast Wisconsin, which has been in the fall or sometimes in the.
Yeah, you want me to say what the date's on that?
Yeah, if you know what it is for 2024, go ahead.
Right. It's on Thursday, September 19th, and it's going to be held at the Wisconsin, the Akamwa Club. And so that we're really excited about it. Yeah.
All right. Before I go on, I forgot to put this one on there, but I would be remiss to not mention that there will be a new crew of the Wisconsin Lake Leaders Institute convening this year. The nominations are being taken for that. If you're not familiar with Lake Leaders, it's a 3-session program. Meet in May and then in September and in October for 2 days each at various places around the state. Learn all about leadership and how it applies to lakes and waters of Wisconsin. As I think you heard, nearly all of the board of directors are Lake Leaders graduates, and I'm a proud graduate of Crew 9 myself. It is run by us, largely administered by Sarah Winju at Extension Lakes and DNR as well. I don't have the deadline for nominations, so I'm guessing if Sarah, she's already put the link in the Q&A. Of course you did, Sarah. Thanks. I knew you'd be on top of it. So check that out. It's a great program, and it's a lot of fun. You meet a lot of great people. Lake Kit. So Lake Kit is our program for lake organizations to get a relatively affordable website against what most market prices are. It has been, as those of you who have Lake Kit sites may know, been in a bit of a state of flux this year. So we do have some announcements today. The first is that the board of directors voted to help try to cover the cost of it, because we were running it at a premium before, that we are increasing for the 2024 billing. So that's not going to happen on January 1st. That'll be, you just all paid for 2023. So that'll be coming later in the year. But $125 a year for member organizations, $175 for non-members. We're pretty comfortable that's still below what you would probably pay for similar services from other sites. And as I said, those invoices for 2024 will not be coming out until probably after the Lakes Convention, if not maybe a little later than that. And it is we are very flexible with being able to work with you as to when the best time for you to pay for that. So if you're wanting to pay for it earlier, you can contact me and I can do an invoice and we can get that taken care of. For groups that have not used it before, we are in a moratorium right now of not taking on new sites, but we are getting close to being ready to reopening that. There are a couple of reasons that we went into that moratorium. We wanted to make sure that the program was stable. We had tried to move to a different platform that we thought was going to be better for us. That didn't work. Like some of you know. So we went back to where we were. It's been working pretty well. So we're pretty solid on that for the moment. But we're also still cognizant that we're trying to make this continue to make this easy to use, stable, but also able for us to be able to administer it. And mostly it's been run by a group of very, very dedicated volunteers. Some of you I think are on this call right now, and I really thank all of you that have volunteered your time to help with this program and have stuck with it through all of this, trying to determine the best feature of the program. But we are taking probably a good chunk of 2024 to figure out what we're going to do, and we'll move on from there. But for now, everything is just going to stay the same, other than that. And we do unfortunately have to increase the annual fee. And lastly, I won't take we're running out of time swiftly. I won't take any time on this, but we continue to advocate not only on wake boats and on Chapter 33, but on other things. We don't know what might show up at the end of that legislative session crunch as we come to the end of it. There probably will be some new administrative rulemakings that we'll be watching in 2024 as well. And we still hope to get some Lakes in Action advocacy trainings where we teach you how to be better advocates. So watch for more information on that. And with that, I will turn over to Dan.
Well, you guys knew this was coming. I mean, we are a nonprofit organization. You've heard, we've been doing an awful lot, and it's time for us to grow. You know, Mike is pretty much a one-man show. We've done a lot with our volunteers being our board of directors and Mike. But again, think what we can do if we had a communication specialist, somebody who worked policy and advocacy, and a Lakes organization educator and advisor. The unfortunate thing is these are all great, but they cost money. If you wouldn't mind moving ahead, Mike, on a slide. So with you, Mike just does a script for me, which is great. You can make it happen. It's your lake organization. And are you a member of Wisconsin Lakes? Is your lake organization a member of Wisconsin Lakes? We're moving into the holiday season. Everyone's asking for dollars. I just got a call, actually 2 calls today, soliciting donations. And, obviously this is nothing new, but we are currently running our holiday 2023 campaign. Donations are tax deductible. We are a 501c3. And you can donate to Wisconsin Lakes, the information down at the bottom of your screen. I really would like to thank all of you. You've been so great this past year, actually past few years. A lot of great questions that come in. We try to answer and help as many organizations as we can. All we ask in return is that you help us out to be able to help you out. And to do that, we do need donations. So thank you. And again, thank you for attending the meeting today. A lot of good questions. Really do appreciate reaching out, you reaching out to us and us reaching out to you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Yeah, I think it's just about 6 o'clock. I can stay on the line for a couple more minutes and maybe ask a couple other questions, but maybe I'll turn off the recording at this point. So did put up our information, how you can contact us and contact me. Feel free to do so. And don't forget about the Lakes and Rivers Convention, of course. Again, a big thanks from me to everyone on the board of directors, for our volunteers on Lake Kit, for all of you who have participated in the events and the convention and asked the great questions that challenge us and challenge me to come up with good answers and hopefully move things forward. So this is a fun group of people to work with. There's never a dull day, and I thank you all for it. So until next year, or whenever, well, hopefully in April, we'll or maybe in March at UW Stout. Thanks a lot for being with us.